Hello, beloved souls. Welcome to a commentary channel. Yes, Jem is my name, psychic medium, author, channeler, and truth seeker. Now, because I am a widow and a pension, I don't get much money, and I've authored over 20 books which have been published on Amazon, and I did it because it's free to publish on Amazon, but some of my work dates back to the 1980s. This particular book I started writing in 2008. Anyway, back to what I was saying. Because I don't have savings or money, I can't do an expensive campaign to market myself, my books. So over the next few days, next few weeks, I'll be reading some passages from different books that I have written. So this particular book is another spiritual metaphysical text written about how our world, a creation, is balanced by opposite and opposing forces. If you read my first book, Seeing the Spirituality Behind the Negativity, a menu for the game of life, then this is just a follow-up of that belief system. I'm going to start right from the word go. The balancing act. I am a storyteller and have a story to tell. Whether it's truth or fiction remains to be seen. But like any other storyteller, my job is to tell it, and to tell it as well as I can, and to keep my readers entertained. My story, like any story, whether real or imagined, begins at the beginning like any story should. There always is a beginning, and there will always be an ending. In other words, in the beginning was a creating, and in the end, the creation will either change or cease to exist. To my beginning, the creation was balanced, but the purpose was for players to enter the game and to see how balanced they could make it. Why? The creators wanted to pretend like any being loves a game of pretense. In my beginning, the creation was balanced, and all that existed was perfection. But as the game or my story goes on, playing became very good, and the balance no longer was only in that creation. To balance, we create more forces, attraction and repellence. What were these creations like, these creators of this game? They cannot be described in our words, because we have no way to define such perfect divine wholeness, and how that wholeness separated itself into tiny parts to fulfill the roles and the backdrops of the game. These creators were and are God, but at the start there was no evil, for how can that be in balance and perfection? Yet evil did come into the game, because it was an important part of the plan and the game menu. Evil was created, but that comes later in this story. Now, before I continue this story, it's important to remember one thing. The game was a creation, and thus all creations are illusions. There exists no truth in illusions, and there exists no truth in this game, because it was a pretend game to deliberately unbalance the balance and to balance the unbalance, although in truth and real reality, this balancing act does not exist. Thus, how does one unbalance the balanced and balance the unbalanced? By creating and pretending and by human evolution. To make this game appear real to the players, like all games, there was set boundaries, although once again in truth there exists none. In other words, the game had rules like all games we play do. The players had to pretend. There were many other building blocks used to make this game. That is the easy part for the creators, who create from their very thoughts. The creators came up with many useful ideas, such as time, solidity, limitations, separation, opposite and opposing forces, to keep balance and to no balance. Although once again, remember, this is a game of pretense, and the players deliberately forget all is perfect anyway. And then energy, and the creators thought of the many roles each part could play. Yet this is not quite the beginning of my story. I'm telling what went on behind the scenes to make this story happen. The actual creativity itself is beyond my gifts of storytelling. So for us readers, the story starts at the beginning of the creation, after it had been created, and well into its game before the main characters of our story entered or were born. Once again, it is beyond this story how these characters came into being. They were created like every other part, but these creations are the ones whose purpose was to pretend and to become balanced, although, as I have already told, that is an illusion. My story may even start sometime into these creatures' game playing, but it must start somewhere. Sometime after these creatures became part of the story, they at first were unaware of everything, for the land that they were born into seemed harsh and cruel, and their original main purpose was to survive. These creatures I name humans, but at this time, at the beginning of my story, look nothing like the humans that are later in the story. If we saw how they looked at the beginning of my story, we may be shocked and unable to recognize them as human, because maybe at that stage their humanness could have been more like an animal. See, the humans that exist later in my story often forget their relationship to animals in the story. Therefore, in the start of this story, humans were as animals with animal instincts and with the need to survive. Trying to change the page over, sorry. Bear with me. There we go. Their needs were very basic then. Survival meant avoid dangers and look out for themselves for food. At the start of my story, they were like any other animal hunters and gatherers. They needed food and shelter, somewhere to hide from dangers, be that other animals or the elements. Perhaps, if you want, you could even say they were stupid then, compared to the later technology and knowledge that was to come. How they came to knowledge and understanding may have happened over time, or may have been manipulated by other different players of the game. Again, it is not part of this story to explain that, or when suddenly humans became more and more aware, and it is not part of my story to explain how or when humans started to change in how they looked, how their appearance eventually came to be an appearance that we would recognize as humans. One day, maybe, one individual discovered fire and food tastes better cooked. This is not my story. It is not part of the telling to tell of how history evolved for the humans, but to tell the consequences of that evolvement and how through knowledge the humans learned unbalance and balance. Now I'm going to skip a few pages and I'm near the end of my book here. So I'm just going to go back one page because it won't make sense otherwise. Sorry, just hold on. Indeed, since the death of... So this is further into the book. I've gone miles into the book. Indeed, since the death of Jesus, we have had several holy prophets claiming to be saviors, and thus more sin has been created. Sadly, the more extreme the fanatical belief, be it Christian, Muslim, or whatever, the more evil there is, including terrorism. If we believe there is something wrong, have we not created it? If we think the world is our evil place where sin exists, have we not created it? We have created it. We are the creators of the game. The illusion is that we are faulty, imperfect. Thus, we have been judged. Thus, it is created. Thus, we become. To accept that opposite forces, yin and yang, is to be in balance. To be in balance is not to judge good versus evil. It is to accept what is, a game, a creation. A saviour will always fail, for with each saving, an evil is created. With each new law, a new crime is created. In truth, this is only a game. Sin does not exist except part of the game. We are divine beings. We are not separated as individual I. Rather, we exist infinitely as whole we/I, ever creating. There are many lost souls, ghosts if you like, that cannot leave this illusion, this plane simply out of fear of being judged. They do not realize that this is simply a game of opposite and opposing forces. All that really exists is beautiful, so loving, so perfect. It is beyond the scope of this storyteller. By now, some will know the identity of the storyteller and call me Antichrist. Well, for every force there exists an opposite. I well could be. But it is only a game, and my story. Sin does not exist. Earth is not real. Time does not exist. Boundaries and limits do not exist. Aliens and monsters are all us. I am you, and you are me. We co-created like a game. What a great game we made. Jesus was born in perfection and was tempted but did not sin. Jesus died age 33. It is believed he actually was born in May, a Taurus. His mother Mary married, but Jesus was conceived in holy conception. Jesus was a male. Jesus had followers. He was a leader. And he told his disciples, "Follow me, and I will make you fishers of men." To catch fish, you need bait. Here comes the big lie, the big myth. Our bait was sin. Jesus actually did have power. He seemed to be able to heal the sick. So he himself must have never been ill to be the Son of God. Jesus is still popular and well known 2,000 years later. In his name, holy wars have been committed and barbarians judged and killed. Is that love, I ask you? And I'm going to finish soon. The Bible teaches us to judge a teaching by its faults. Christians have failed. Where is the divine love in any religious war or act of terrorism? How many innocents were burned by the church or tortured because they were believed to be witches? Who is the liar? In the Bible itself, it says, "Beware the war of Babylon. When the Antichrist comes, he will lie." Jesus is a lie, so that must mean the Antichrist speaks the truth? What does anti mean? Against. In other words, everything not Christ-like, not to save. If you come not to save, then you must see there is no sin to be saved from. Christians believed the anti-one will be a great leader. How can that be? He is anti-Christ. Christ was a leader. Thus, the Antichrist does not lead and will not tell you to worship him. Christ teaches to worship God. The Antichrist says God does not exist, for we are God, the Creator. The Christian God has many human traits, jealousy, etc. To worship him is really out of fear that you will not go to hell. Thus, if a Christian type of God has human traits, that God must be imperfect. Now, if the Antichrist teaches the opposites, then this means they come from a place of perfection. What I'm obviously trying to do in the book is to show you how imperfect God is in the Bible, by the contradictions, by what the Bible teaches about wrath, narcissism, blood sacrifices, and so on. So I'm just showing you that what anti means opposite. So the Antichrist is opposite Christ. Anyway, let's keep going. Christians believe the Antichrist is he. But to be anti, to be opposite, is to be a she. She, the war of Babylon, the Bible says. Did Jesus ever have sex? He could and he could not have, because we humans have even turned sexual acts into something dirty. Jesus had to be the perfect sacrifice. Thus, the Antichrist must have a lot of sex. I'm poking fun here. The Antichrist would be born into an abusive family, not the loving one Jesus had. Do you know something? The Antichrist would also believe in saving the world. The Antichrist would want many to stop believing in sin and hell and in judgment. There is no sin, only truth. That is so divine love, no judgment. Let us judge this Antichrist for the moment. Seems to me the fruits of his saving is love. Jesus attracted evil because he was a savior. Thus, the Antichrist would simply be playing the game in balance. If this Antichrist taught sin does not exist, it seems to me there would be a lot more happiness because sin doesn't. It's only a game. If I believed in wholeness, in the infinite we/I, then I have to put the I back together. We have to connect all of us, all I's back. Yet, we are taught the entity I is selfish. I own, but I is a creation to fool us into believing we are separate, disconnected from the whole. Jesus is a creation. Jesus, as the Holy Trinity, said, "Worship me, for I am the only true God." I am the only true God, says the Christian God. The Antichrist would teach the opposite then, to be selfless. God does not need worshipping, for we are God. Another lie is that race exists. We are all equal. By the way, disease is also part of the game. It is a result of emotions or unbalance. Cancer is anger. The bladder represents being pissed off. Bowels get rid of waste. To not eliminate is to hold on to anger or old hurts. You get the drift. If I claim sin does not exist, and this is just an illusion, then I am not Christ-like. I am definitely anti. Am I also anti-Christ for teaching sin does not exist, for teaching all is an illusion, for coming from the place of love, instead of the Christian place of fear, that if you are not saved, you will go to hell eternally? Yet, I saw fault and evil too, and ended up judging myself as failing. Satan does not exist. By the way, there is nothing wrong with sex. It was an added bonus to the game, and when we have this union, we are part of another. Where does that person begin and the other end? I too believe in forgiving, but you cannot save the world if you cannot save yourself. You cannot save yourself if you see yourself as faulty, imperfect, and if you see yourself as sinful. You need to be saved yourself. You cannot love or forgive until you love and forgive yourself. If you believe it, then it will be. The famous philosopher Descartes said, and I quote, "It is to think, and therefore I am." Every time you have a thought, you create. You create your own reality. You do not need to be saved from anything. There exists no God to judge us. We are the creators. How marvelous is our creation. And to think of sin, wow, that just added an extra layer to the creation. Go and be free. Realize you cannot change the world. Jesus did not. There is nothing you can do. Accept who you are, and that this is an illusion, and that you create. If you believe in evil, your very thoughts have created such. This marvelous game was a co-creation. We are all winners. Even if you think you are a failure, you are not. You are only playing a game. In real reality, there exists no such thing as opposites and opposing forces. It was created for us to play our balancing act, our own game. And I go on to say the game is very old now, and we are nearing the end. When we die, we leave the game and return to what we really are. My story is done. I hope I told it well. When the game will finally cease to be is when we uncreate or change what we have created. Truly, it was never meant...
This is a reminder.
Stop. Sorry. Truly, it was never meant to be so hard. It was meant to enjoy, as all games are. I am sorry for your hurts, and I'm sorry I have hurt. I am sorry for judging. I have not told this story for you to commit wrongdoings. You will only hurt yourself. Even though evil does not really exist, we have not come to play the game to hurt each other. We have come to be reconnected. Try and play your game without hurting another, try and play your game without hurting another, or at his or her expense. You will still win, as we are all part of each other. If you hurt another or commit a crime, you have hurt yourself. Robbing another steals from yourself. Sexually abusing another is definitely not loving yourself. We are not here to inflict harm on each other. Why should we, if there is no such thing as the individual I? Then each time we are at conflict with one another, each time we commit an awful act against another, we hurt the whole. I hurt you and you hurt me, and we hurt ourselves in the process. Even though sin does not exist, we have come to play and to find our own way back from this illusion to all that really exists, and back to wholeness and to divine love. So if we do hurt another, have we not hurt ourselves and created evil? I am not saying the laws are right, for indeed many are wrong. Games always have boundaries. We can all co-create, so we have the power to uncreate or change a creation. I have told you a story about balancing. And that's still not the end. I've skipped a lot of pages. I just want to end it here. In my book, there have times I have not been a nice person and have been selfish. I am the hardest on myself. It is sad to see the misery and cruelty that exists in this world, all through greed, control, and power. There is, however, nothing you or I can do to save the world. We co-created, and we can by realizing the lie, this is change it or uncreate. In the meantime, accept it as it is and try to play your game. For you, without the creation of hurt or evil of others, I am done. Just one last thing. Many think of this world we created as hell, but it's a game, and a entertaining one at that. I am certain we have all watched a horror movie, and there have been parts that have sickened and revolted us. But does that really stop us from watching? The fact, the more dramas, the more entertaining. And when the movie ends, we sit back and think, wow, that was a great movie. Well, think of it, Earth, as just like that. So, yes, and I'll be back reading another story soon. If you have made it this far, thank you. Please be kind to one another and to yourselves. Love, light, and blessings. Bye.